Going back to Lord of the Rings, when that movie, from a kid, when I was a kid, one of the first movies that I had seen or series was Narnia, and for whatever reason, I'm like, okay, this is 100% true. This world exists, and it resonated with me to such a high degree, and I would refuse to believe that this doesn't exist somewhere. It didn't exist. There were just like some form of truth to me. And then fast forward many decades later, and you go going back to Lord of the Rings. I believe the gentleman had said, I think he was from the 1800s, late 1800s, if I'm not mistaken. I think he had said that the story for the Lord of the Rings was told to him. But I don't know the exact details of it, but it was some kind of entity that had, come to him, whether it's dream or in physicality, I'm not sure, but told him the whole story of the Lord of the Rings, and like that's why it's so detailed. And Avatar, same thing with James Cameron's Avatar, same thing with the Star Wars. You put all of these movies together, and you have a very good understanding of the past, present, and potentially future. At the very least, what's going on in this realm of ours.
Yes, and there are divine messengers, but we have to, clear out all of the darker attributes inside of ourselves in order to connect with them. They will connect through different thought forms that come, different dreams that come. Even some people have manifestations of them, appearing before them. This is what the mind can do when it reaches a certain point of awareness, is to make connection with higher realms that are here to be of service, to us. But we have to ask for help. And going back to what you're saying about the Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, that's a reference to the sun, the moon, and Saturn, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. No,
the lion is the sun. The lion is always the sun.
The sun, yeah.
Leo. Yeah. Yes, Leo, the house of Leo. There's only one house that the sun rules, and it's the house of Leo, which is the lion. And the witch is the moon. The moon is always associated with witches. And then the wardrobe is a cube. It's a box. So, yeah, I mean, it hit me like a couple of years ago. I was like, oh my God, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. It's about our story again. But you can go through all of these different movies and you can pick it apart like that. The adversary is usually Saturn, which is Satan. Then you have a female figure like Leia, in Star Wars. You have Han Solo, who's supposed to be like the sun. I mean, like all these different things. And then, of course, Darth Vader is Saturn. So symbolic language. It's literally, once you get just a little bit, you'll start seeing it everywhere. And you're like, okay, it's in the code.
But it truly is a world of symbology we live in.
Yeah, and we're not supposed to be using this language. I want to learn maybe Aramaic or something, one of the older languages, because it still carries a Semitic languages or Semitic languages. And this is what I realized. The formulation of words is the most important thing. And when they come up with all of these ideas, anti-Semitic, and not like, no, that's a language. It's a language style. It's a sound. And it's not a religion. Why would they even say anti-Semitic? So I was thinking about how a lot of words sound similar, and Semitic sounds like Semitic because the fire letter languages are the languages and letters of spirit. And spirit is the light. So whatever Kemet held as a language is quite possibly what we should try to strive to uncover, because with the word comes the power of creation. And if we just had the right sequences of sounds, we could start using it to create our world around us. like with power, because you have to have the male and female. I won't call them male and female because that's a reference to animals. The divine masculine and feminine energies are the solfeggio scale that is missing from the language sequencing. And if you have people that are toning and chanting in unison, you create a standing wave. And then, of course, the chant chambers that we call them cathedrals. They were chant chambers for healing and putting out these types of healing frequencies and quite possibly manifesting material, raw material, whatever people are focused on. If they want to focus on a red rose appearing before them, if you got everybody chanting in a circle, it's going to create that thing from the ether. Because focused minds and hearts that are open as a childlike field start to pull in the essence of what the divine light frequencies are. And that is one of the most sacred things in this existence that is being held away from us. So that
it was fascinating you said that. So one of the things that I started doing, like I was when I had like again this awakening, right? I started collecting antiques because I knew the past was running on free energy and there's all kinds of technology that's just been completely hidden on us, right? I started going around and looking for specific types of antiques and things that I think they're, what do we call them now? Androids now, or androids. Two pieces that you would find beside fireplaces, and there's sometimes like a third piece in the middle, right? So I started collecting some of these, and I have, a few in my collection. And one thing I noticed is that, for example, the ones that were made from what I think were the 1800s were a little more rudimentary and a little bit more basic, and they seem to have had some kind of internal combustion type mechanism inside of it, because you can open them up and you can see there's something that was burning inside of it. Maybe it was mercury, maybe who knows, right? But what they all have is like a stamp of some kind, like a company stamp of some kind, right? So, okay, like there's a company sometime in the 1800s that's still making this stuff. But then when you go further back, and then oh man, I wish I had one right now. I'd take a picture and show you. But we have them like from the so-called Bronze Age, which was a lot more advanced than we think. And you have these incredible, intricate pieces that, to me, they scream like energy gathering devices of some kind. But none of them have any kind of a stamp of any kind as to who made it. No signature, no logo whatsoever. There's no company written on it. There's no date as to when it was made. And there's quite a few of these. So I've always wondered how on earth, like, there couldn't have been a business out there making this, because even if it was like an artisan of some kind, he would have put some kind of a marker or some kind of his own personal mark. This is me, I made it, right? But we have, oh God, then the millions probably still sticking around all over the earth. That if you from these so-called Bronze Age, where there's no marking whatsoever, there's no company logo stamp whatsoever, and all of the stuff starts sometime in the late 1700s to 1800s.
Yeah. Yeah.
So they very well could have just manifested it out of thin air, really.
Well, I think a lot of things in the past, there were people, and they're probably still here. I sense that there are still eternals on both sides that are here. You have alchemists, eternal alchemists. You have all these stories of all these different alchemists who created the elixir of life and disappeared into the world, and then were popping up in different timelines of history around the world. And so, they're still living. And then you have obviously AI that can be integrated into the body with cloning and stuff, and you can live eternally like that. And then you have vampires. There's a vampire that's actually talking about how he became a vampire, and he was basically born as one, and that they keep to themselves, but they have the capability of being eternal, and they have a certain moral code. And he said the Council of Vampires, they don't go out, and they're not like rogue force where they just go out and start murdering people. They have a code where they have familiars who have devoted themselves to donating their blood to keep them sustained. But, there's all these different factions of beings, and we even have the devas and all these other spiritual things that are out here that are eternal already. And I think that's all that it is. It's coming back into our awareness about what this world truly entails. But there's this dark force that wants to control us all because of Saturn's energy that moves through people too. And people have this dualistic nature right now, and people have darkness right now, where they're wanting to control others, or they're wanting to own, they're like hoarding, just like the Golem in Lord of the Rings. It's like, no, mine, my precious, this is my empire. Nobody comes to my world. Have this elaborate estate, all this stuff. And greed is like one of the foundational things. But you have people like us we see this whole thing rising, and we're seeking salvation on the other side of the control system and what it represents to be a materialist, basically. And that's wholeheartedly what I'm seeking in my life. But all of those technologies that you speak of, they had amazing things because it represents the energy of Jupiter. Jupiter's energy is about wealth. It's about prosperity. It's about expansion of things. And so you see all these elaborate designs in the architecture and in the objects that people created, just amazing things. And it's all kind of getting rudimentary, is kind of like just boring now because of the cube energy of Saturn. So everything's a cube shape and black cubes, black, the cell phone, the technologies. But at the same time, Saturn's lighter side is about agriculture. And that's why people are feeling this call to spirit to go out and preserve Earth, because that is like planting the seeds for the future that comes after this satanic Saturnian energy of merging with machines happens, because we've got to have a support system in place when the world collapses in on itself, because the age of Aquarius represents the rise and the pinnacle point of all of the industrial age, and then we'll be on the decline of the industrial age back down to what it means to be foundational in the world. Because eventually, once we get on the other side of the zodiac, where we begin with Sagittarius, I think we're all going to be nomads by the time we get to Sagittarius, and that we'll be traveling a lot, because horses travel across the land. They don't stay still in one place. I think there might be a dark overlord ship that kind of is, governing people, or, running people off of their lands and stuff, like the kings, they have, get off of my land. We own it all. So you'll have to be like nomadic again, where you're roaming. And then by the time you get to Scorpio, we're going to be reproducing, because we will have collapsed down again. Like this age right now is like the beginning of the end for humanity. This is why they say that it's going to be 2/3 of the earth shall die, because we are consuming products, the GMO products, that are stopping the divine code from replicating itself. And this will be generational. It's going to hit in about, if it's not your children, it'll be your children's children. If they're eating genetically modified foods, it's going to affect them where they will no longer be able to reproduce. So they already have these birthing pods ready for when people want to have a baby. You're going to have your baby synthetically produced in a synthetic womb. They're not going to have empathy, because they're not going to be raised with their mother. So all these things, because people are, again, consenting to contract with this kind of thing. Because the dark side must have consent to have control of you. This is where, Satan is a lord of contracts. You sign the contracts with Satan, guess what's going to happen? He's going to own your soul in some way, shape, or form. And that's what this is all about. So, if we care, if we truly want to dip from society, our voice is made of light and has the power of creation. So I have in my documents, I created a document that supersedes and negates all of these contracts that I've ever written, because your living voice is the power of creation, and it stands above and beyond all of the satanic New World Order and all of their stuff. When you realize that you have the code of what they call God Spark, and that you have the power to, deny all of that stuff that you've done in the past unknowingly because you weren't aware of what was really going on. In your ignorance, you just agreed to things. You can just deny, you can just say, I denounce all of this and I cancel all these contracts, past, present, future, and I am sovereign and I shall ascend from this position where I am, and I nullify all of those contracts. It's very important, I think, to do so, because you're speaking it into the ether. And that ether, it's writing, it's scribing right now your story. And your story gets passed down through each incarnation, and that's where Dolores Cannon's work comes in. It operates through light frequencies. It's not through the lineage itself. It's actually the light. This is why they are trying to keep their lineage in order. You hear about all the bloodline families, because they're looking for the ones who carry that dark code, the one that will house the dark spirits. And, there's different reasons, because there's always a multi-level reason for their actions. And they're looking for
speaking
divine
of the lineages and those that are looking to house, like I wholeheartedly agree with you on that. I wanted to ask you, what's your opinion on Trump?
I think Trump,
he's big into the bloodlines. He's mentioned it. He's mentioned the German bloodline. I think there's a lot more than meets the eye when it comes to Trump.
Yes.
Just don't know what.
Again, he's a materialist, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, all of these people in positions of power are materialists, right? They have a dark side and a light side. They have a right hand and a left hand. The right hand has to be on the side of light for their role play, even though Trump is in alignment to keep the timelines on point. Trump is not an authority of anything. He's a figurehead, and he's a mouthpiece.
Yeah, for sure.
What I think, and this is based on my zodiac thinking and the knowledge of the giants and the things of this nature, I think the authorizing force, and that this is allowed because there's an actual divine code that's played out in this plane. I believe the authorizing force is down in Antarctica. And I think that authorizing force is where they're getting their commands from. And that authorizing force might be a type of giants. And if you get into Yggdrasil, the Norse cosmology called Yggdrasil, you start realizing that there are elemental realms that have precedence here. And that obviously a higher power, even beyond the human level, is at play. You learn about the kings of the four corners who are at the center of our flat earth plane. This is why I think they want Greenland to be a part of this land. Because up above Greenland is the Garden of Eden. And I'll get out the map and I'll show you in a minute. It's where the Hyperboreans are. And they live in a perpetual springtime. And that perpetual spring is basically representative, again, of the zodiac wheel that I showed. And that there are the four kings there that are the benevolent ones, possibly. I don't know. I know that BlackRock is supposed to be in the center of that whole thing. I'll do a screen.
This does tie into, I'm hoping to get a couple of these people on to just have a chat with them. OBE, experiencers where they say when they've gone to beyond the ice wall and there's areas over there that are completely outside of the reset, and civilization and life is very different over there.
Yes, because we are in the bullseye. There are concentric rings in this existence, and it forms the centralized nation of Atlantis. I believe what we know of as Atlantis was the capital city, and that it was inside the Eye of the Sahara. Because if you go on Google Maps and you look up the Eye of the Sahara and then zoom in, not only does it look like an eyeball looking out at you, but it also depicts the concentric rings with water.
It has the rings, yeah.
And there's no water there. There was a guy that went there. He was a YouTuber, and he went to Mauritania, and he filmed, and he's like, there's no water. But it looks like there was some sort of explosion because everything's in like little particles and such. And I think the greater aspect of it might be underneath all of that rubble, and nobody will go and dig there because that's not time for that truth. We're in a period where it's like, no, we gotta be here in Aquarius. This is where we entered into the story, and we have to play this part of the story. This is a new chapter. So now this is very fascinating. I don't know how much have you dove into the thing of Hyperborea?
So Hyperborea, probably over 10 years ago, and the only person that was really talking about it at the time was Flat Earth British. He was going into the maps, and we would see the Hyperborea depicted on certain maps and whatnot. And I really haven't dove too much into it, other than the little bit that I know that it was a totally different civilization and perhaps benevolent, like you said.
Well, there's a thing that's called the Kings of the Four Corners. And it's also kind of aligned with this notion of the Garden of Eden and this Hyperborean thing. So they are the keepers of the world. They hold the world in balance, the Kings of the Four Corners. And I believe that these are the four corners that they're talking about. And I believe that also on the opposite of each of these little kind of cubes, these kind of like sections, that on the opposite direction, that there's an opposing force. Because this is the zodiac. If you look at it, you're like, okay, that's the zodiac. And this is where the cross comes in. And that if these are four islands, they quite possibly represent the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. And that these kings, are kind of associated with pulling the strings in our world too. Like this would be the right-hand path, I guess, and the outer points would be the left-hand path. Because when you really start looking at it and you get another flat Earth map that depicts all of the land masses in their fullest, you can kind of see that Antarctica is down at the kind of southwest corner. And you're like, I wonder if the benevolence of the world is coming from like this sector, from the heart, because this would be the heart of the world essentially. And that the antithesis to this would be down in Antarctica fighting against what they call the Nephilim, because Nephilim are actually frost giants and also spirits. That's what in Yggdrasil is where that ties into. Because there's a land of frost and spirits and ice giants. And that's Niflheimer, which is the home of the frost giants. That's what Heimer means, is home. So Nifl, I'm like, that's Nephilim.
Wow.
Yes, so it's in Norse language. That's where that Nephilim comes from, apparently, because that's the only word that I've found that correlates with anything. And so what are we dealing with right now? We're dealing with a lot of spirits, a lot of spirit possession, little spiritual things. Nephilim. Yeah. Yes. Nephilim are not just giants. That's not, people are using it as a blanketing term for all giants, but that's not what truth is. You have to know that there are elemental giants. And there's a treasure hunter channel, which is very interesting. Terry Carter's treasure hunting channel. He interviews a Hispanic guy who went up into the mountains of Utah. And he was told by some indigenous people over there, they're like, don't light a fire at night. And he went out there camping because he wanted to go prospecting for gold. And he's like, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm just going to light a fire. Well, he said these fire giants showed up.
Wow.
And their heads were on fire. He's like, they had heads. He said he was so freaked out. He was hiding behind a rock. And he said that there were like, I don't remember how many he said, like 7 or 5 or something. They showed up. So that would be Muspelheimer giants. That's the fire.
Oh my goodness.
So I believe, because that's not a conspiracy channel. This guy just goes and prospects and stuff. And he had
he's a prospector.
Yeah, so I believe our world is Yggdrasil, and it's the closest thing that we can kind of associate. And that Yggdrasil is where you get the whole notion of the Lord of the Rings. And the same with the Thor movies. That's where they're basing it off of Yggdrasil, because that's what it is. It's all associated. And the sun is Odin's right eye, because Odin, so if you get into all that Norse myth stuff, you start realizing that they're using symbolic language. Odin sacrificed his right eye into the well of Erd. It's URD, that's the shortened form, but the D became TH in our language. So it's Earth. Odin sacrificed his right eye to gain knowledge and awareness. It says in the story that's online, it says the knowledge of women. And I'm like, knowledge of women? That doesn't make any sense. But if you think about it, this entire plane, the earth and water, are all feminine energies.
Feminine, yeah.
It's magnetic. So, which would mean that if it's a well, that means we're in water. We're in a type of water. And the firmament is dividing. It's holding back the water from the water below us. And the water rises and falls here. We're inside an alembic, the alchemist's alembic. If you start thinking about it, you're like, oh my God, it is. If you think of an alembic is like a jug. It's a glass jar. And you heat that jar, and the different moisture that's in the contents will rise and then trickle back down to, it starts to basically distill itself. And you're like, oh my God, that's what the rain does. It kind of falls back down. And when you distill water, it actually repurifies it to its original form, because you're releasing the particulates that it's gained, and you're purifying it with heat and then cooling it so that it falls back down to the ground and it becomes more purified. And that's why they're doing all the things they're doing right now with all the chemicals and stuff, spraying it's going into the water, and then we're just kind of regenerating a bunch of garbage. But we are inside the Olympic Games. I'm like, oh my God, that's where they got all this stuff from. It's not Olympic. Oh my goodness. It's not Olympic, it's Olympic with a B. I'm like, oh my God.
That's fascinating. That's a good connection.
Well, I mean, alchemy, I'm telling you, I'm encouraging everybody out there in cyber world, just start learning a little bit about alchemy. Air, fire, water, earth, follow it. Follow the trail. You will not be misled, because it's a truth that can be unveiled. That's what that symbol for Metatron is. Let me get this out of here. We'll pull up Metatron again. When you have this symbol, which is a symbol,
Metatron's cube. Yeah.
fire And the water, this is masculine, air and fire. This is water and earth. They are masculine and feminine. And when they marry together, they co-create life. And that's where all of the plants come from. And all of the things, all the fish in the waters. I have witnessed this. Okay, so I was out here with my horses putting water in their buckets. And I was thinking about the wild edible plants in my yard. And while I was thinking about the wild plants, I was like, oh my God, I haven't seen a lamb's ear plant, which is an edible plant. And I'm like, I would like to go out and find one, maybe in the forest, and bring one and put it in my yard. And I had this open sense of wonder, because I was like, I haven't seen that. I was very open with my energy, in the energy of a child, essentially. Very clear. And I was thinking about what that plant looked like with my thoughts. And as I'm looking down at the water, some of the water is splashing onto the ground. That thought impregnated the water, and the water touched the carbon of the earth. And the plant manifested within 4 months in that spot where I had those thoughts. I said, oh my God.
Fascinating.
We can create matter with our minds. I was like,
yeah, I wholeheartedly believe that. I really, truly do believe that. And I think, there's like a bifurcation going on in society, whereas we look out there, you see, a portion of society just going deeper into the nonsense. And, especially with the pandemic, there's so many people just wholeheartedly believed every bit of the lies that was coming out of the TV. But then there's another aspect. I mean, so many people woke up, right? So many people woke up during that time. That was their waking point. And there's definitely a splitting of society going on, where there's another portion of us are waking up to these fundamental truths.
Absolutely, because this is where the divine split happens. Again, it goes back to that whole astrotheology chart where I'll share the screen again so you can see.
So you think we're in the age of Aquarius right now?
We're going into it fully.
Going into it.
Yes. Look, okay, so you have Plato's Platonic solids also speak a language in their shapes and forms. So this is the sign of water. This is the Plato's Platonic solids, and it has, different sides. And this is the sign for air, which is almost like two pyramids on top of each other. They're kind of like separated. But the energy of such is that we're leaving this blue and going into what would be a red kind of energy, which, even though this is depicted as blue, this is the underworld and this is the overworld, essentially. Whenever you see blue, just think it's associated with the underworld and the yin energy right here, the black. And the Korean flag has the red and blue yin and yang, by the way, too. And I'm like, I see you. I see with your fire and water. So we have about 200 years right here to integrate fully into the age of Aquarius, because we're on the cusp of leaving this energy of Pisces. The world stage has to evolve. It's a backdrop for all the souls and spirits to play a part, a character role. And that's why, it's important to know what your astrology chart actually holds for the energy, and it can kind of give you some insight into possibly your future path and things of that nature. Yeah. So I think by diving into the past through Dolores Cannon's work, and then also diving into the future by looking at your astrology chart, I think you can kind of get a sense of what your path forward holds. Your path is always being created by your mind, but I think it's pretty much set too in some ways. I think the divine plan is always kind of encoded in our actions. Like, we're going to find what we're supposed to find or not supposed to find based on our alignment too. But every astrological age has to have like a crossover point where that energy now has to be erased. And this is part of why they were erasing the old world. This is essentially the timeline went from where they call it like 0 BC, but they also rewrote the timeline during the Gregorian phase. They created the Gregorian calendar. They ascended the timeline by, I think it was it 600 or 900 years? I don't know. They say that it's about 1,000 years that they accelerated the timeline.
Yeah.
They wanted to start trying to hijack this whole thing, this whole dynamic, to alter time to be like we actually manifest their intentions, but you can't subvert the divine code and the divine time. You just can't. You could try to hack the way Saturn flows with all the other systems above us, but it's so untouchable. That's why they put the calendar over our head in the stars. But we don't know how to read the stars anymore, and they're clouding up the sky so much that nobody can read the stars. So you'll have to listen to what their story is and believe what they say.
Yeah.
That's why I'm a little leery about some of these astrology apps and different websites and stuff, because I don't know how accurate they are. But I
question them myself.
Yeah, but if you just grab this and you have some symbolic language to follow, you can kind of follow the story just in the symbology. And the stuff that you find out in the world, you'll be like, okay, well, that's this group and that's that group. If you see anything to do with lions and anything to do with gold, follow it. Follow it and don't let go of it, because that is where the light of the world will reside. I believe that they use a symbolic language. There is a bank that's out here, and it's called Ameris Bank, and it has a lion head for its logo. I'm like, I think I need to get with that. It also has a white building. I've not seen it in another color but white, and I'm like, I think I need to find that bank and go get a account here. Because all of these other ones, like there's a Truist Bank, and Bank of America and all these things, they're telling you what they are with their symbolic language. The Bank of America is the Berit-ish flag. Berit, B-E-R-E-T, B-E-R-E-T, or I-T, Berit and ish. Berit means man. No, Berit means covenant and ish means man. Sorry, I'm getting it all confused. And there is a flag from the 1600s East India Company. Let's see if I have it. The East India Company, and I don't see it. I guess I didn't label it, but it is a flag that holds the American flag and the British flag together. And that is like, oh, great symbols. Let's see. That one was called flags. No. Anyway, that's before this country was even found dead, right? So I'm just saying they put it in our faces with the language. And
yeah, most definitely. Now, when we are leaving this particular age, or 200 years into the next age, what will the religions look like? Like, what's happening with Christianity and Islam and Judaism? Are they going to morph into like new identities run by the same old priest class, or is one going to rule over the other? Like, for example, with an Islamic understanding, they have that Islam will at some point rule the whole world, and I wonder if the story has not already been played on us. There's things that I've looked into the past. We'll get into another video that makes me wonder, has the story potentially been played over many times on us? But I want to know what your perspective on this is.
Well, I'll tell you again. You can go right back to the zodiac for this. Now I'm looking for a screenshot that I just took recently of the Israeli is the symbol for Israel for their Grand Lodge of Freemasonry. I took a screenshot of it the other day because I was like, oh my God, there it is. Essentially, there's a religion for each astrological age. And this is where I'm saying, like, the 12 tribes of Isis, Ra, and El get to rule an astrological house. And they have their symbolic language that's going to carry over into other timelines as well, I believe, in the future. Essentially, what we have is the sun. The sun is always also represented as a cross because that's what the zodiac is about. The zodiac is a word that comes from the zoo of animals at the 33rd degree parallel in the sky. And the zoo of animals is what we go by on a daily basis as they traverse the sky in an hourly fashion. And they also have this extreme timeline of, 26,000 years where you go through an astrological age in about 2,150 years. But since there's 12, you got to add those all up and it becomes about 26,000. So anyway, the age of Pisces is where this notion of the cross comes in because we were falling on the cross into the winter cycle with the sun. Now we're going into the age of Aquarius that will be ruled by Islam. And Islam gets to rule this house of Aquarius. They've already designated their goddess Sophia is a robot, essentially, that is creating other AI robots. And this is where that whole notion of the Antichrist shall be made in the Middle East, shall rise from the Middle East.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, so they made her a female, even though a robot has no gender. They made her a female so that people wouldn't really get the symbolic language that it represents. That the Antichrist is AI and that it's synthetic life. It has no real soul. But again, people will merge with these things and it'll carry their soul. But they will no longer be able to ascend once that happens. And these are all spiritual lessons. We're in a spiritual school because there's 12 houses of the zodiac and there's 12 grades of school. And you have to have the bad teacher and you have to have the good teacher.
Yeah, so true.
So Israel, Greater Israel is going to be built. It's going to take over half of Saudi Arabia. I have a map, a future map that kind of discusses that. And it encompasses half of Saudi Arabia. And I think that's possibly why they have this whole endeavor to build the line in the sand. You know what I'm saying?
That's not going so well for them right now. But yeah, they are trying to build it.
Yeah, the line in the sand. I was looking at all this symbolic language about Sophia, which comes from the Gnostic language, right? Like this is all in the Gnostic teachings about Goddess Sophia and how she created this anomalous thing, this demonic force, essentially, the demiurge, based on, her alignment with not creating with her co-creator. And she created this destructive force. Well, that's exactly what they've done with the Sophia that they've deemed labeled a female of all things, and I'm kind of question that because of where they actually kind of suppress the divine feminine in their country. I mean, I don't know the ins and outs of it all, but I do know that.
They do.
When I went over there, I went to Jordan, and you couldn't find a woman anywhere except inside a store selling something, and they cover them up and they hide them because they're kind of It's all that.
Yeah, it's very bad. Like even for my particular country, I was born in Afghanistan. It wasn't like this at all. In the, let's say, 60s, 70s, even up to the 80s when there was a communist government in power. But by the time they brought in these Islamic regimes, the so-called freedom fighters, but they all had their very strong Islamic identities. By the time these people came into power, it turned into a shit show very quickly. And here we are today with the Taliban in power, and it's gotten only worse since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of that because, again, we're going into the energy of Saturn. The dark energy of Saturn affects people, especially people that are not trying to integrate into their heart chakra and awareness of themselves as being the solution for the world's problems. When they are shadowed in darkness, which is what Saturn kind of represents, they lose themselves in the corrupt greed of this illusion, this black magic spell of money and, aggrandizing material gains over what it means to be humble and just honest. And that's why we have cartels running the world. They're going to collapse the entire world. It's already destined. We just have to, gain some sort of spiritual grounding and maybe hold space for the light that will come in years from now. Because the sun will start rising a little bit more on this world once we get through Sagittarius and once we start ascending. From Scorpio, I believe Scorpio will represent the rebirth of all forms of natural life because it rules the genitalia. And so it's going to be all about mass reproduction to try to get things back in order and alignment before we get over to Libra. Libra will be the next phase. And Libra is another air sign. So we'll have all these ideas to collaborate and collaboratively co-create the divine essence of what it truly means to be spiritual with the earth before we get into Virgo, which is an earth sign. And that's when the earth will be green again everywhere. But we have to burn the earth first. And that's what this age represents, is burning of the earth. It's part of the alchemy process. The sign and symbol for Aquarius is actually multiplication. And this is why we have so many different ideas and people are sparking off into different directions. They're, just shooting off like shooting stars everywhere. So, and then Israel rules the age of Capricorn. And since they are one of the darker forces and very, very corrupt, they are here to corrupt the entire divine code by creating the genetic hybrids again. This is why they are, hoarding the giant bones and all of these things. I realized when we bury our families and stuff, we allow their bones to remain behind, to be summoned from the dead through their genetics that are still in their bones.
Yeah.
And I'm sure about in Islam and Sufis and stuff, how they're using magic practice, especially the Shams al-Marif or whatever it is. Like, there's a book of black magic that is spreading around.
Oh yeah. There's a total dark side to dark and black magic within Islam, and it can get quite gnarly. I'm not well versed in it, but I do know that there's a very, very powerful and potent magic potentially if it's done properly. My mom has all kinds of fascinating stories. We had in Afghanistan at one point a decent sized Jewish community. So within Afghanistan, there was certain Muslim preachers that were known to be practitioners of black magic, but there was also, apparently, from what my parents had told me, the most powerful ones were considered to be the Jewish practitioners of black magic.
Yes. Because what I suspect with the Kabbalah is that it is the dark tree of life. And I say that because of the sound frequencies that are in the Kabbalah. Let me see if I can pull one up. And the fact that it does not have the 12 Sephiroth. So let me see if I can pull up one. This is actually in the book of the Golden Dawn. It has different sound frequencies for the Sephiroth, and this is also missing the other two Sephiroth. In the Kathara grid, there is actually 12. So what they're trying to teach in Kabbalah, I think, is the what they call the clip off. I think they've kind of reversed it somehow or something. Like the word Malkuth is essentially the name of a demon, and it's called Malkith. Let's see if I can find it right quick. Malkith, Hell, Hades, Malkith, Blood Flock. I was like, Malkuth does not sound like a good word because of how it goes down in tone. And I was like, let me look this up. And when I started looking at, I think it was Rings of Power or something, there was some other movie that I came across, and the evil guy's name was Malkith. And I said, that sounds like Malkuth, which is the lowest Sephiroth. And I was like, oh my God. And that's when it sent me down this trail of finding out that Malkith is a demon. Yeah. So I question that entire Kabbalistic tree. I will not use those sound frequencies because you're essentially using a force of dark magic. And I believe it's the left-hand path of the tree of death. Because there are other trees out here that have different sound word associations with the Sephiroth. And sound is the most important thing in this existence because it's this what creates light. And I think they're using people to create more underworld energy. Yeah. So that's, I mean, my awareness is just like, you know, so high. It's like I instantly pick up on things now. Once you just start, you gotta like just integrate it every day, and you sort of sit on it and digest it, and then essentially things will just go bing, and they just pop, and you go, oh my God! Especially etymology of words. MER, the word mer for Merkaba, it means death. Huh. MER means death. Mermaid, death maid. Merchant, death chant. I'm like, oh my God. You can just look it up in etymology. Etymology will not lead you wrong either.
I had a Jewish professor in college that him and I mean, he was one of the few, with the exception of a couple of Jewish kids that were my electricians, that were just like two schmucks like you and I, right? So we can be able to have like a conversation on anything about them, and there wasn't like, oh my God, I'm getting offended. So him and I, we were, mind you, I'm a young kid, I'm in college, and he was my international law professor. So I ended up dropping out of college because I realized this is all just bullshit. But him and I, we ended up getting along with each other. And as class was over, I would walk into his car and always have like fascinating conversation on Zionism and whatnot. So one day when everything's off, college is done, I finished writing my exam. I come back to get my mark, and he gives me a fantastic mark, but really just because of most likely just because of the conversations we were having. And he says, like, look, Mustafa, you're wasting your time, you're wasting your energy. Don't bother with this whole boycott this, boycott that. You're not going to make a difference in this world. It's all owned by the same, corporations. If you're going to boycott Duracell, what are you going to buy? The other Coppertone is owned by the same one. And if you're going to boycott all of them, you're going to go buy the no-name brand. It's owned by the same one. It's like, I get it. I can't do anything. And he tried to wait. He's like, there's one thing I can wake you up to. And if you can start, making these changes, then you'll make some individual personal changes in your life. And he showed me that he had created his own ID. And he was the first person to tell me that we are all incorporated. And this was so beyond me at the time. I'm like, what? He's like, we're all incorporated. Your ID doesn't represent you. When you go to court, the judge says, do you understand? You're actually stating that I stand under my right. And he went on and on and on and on and on. And I was like, I looked at this guy, I'm like, okay, he's got to be pulling my leg. Like, he must have been a secret Zionist at this whole time. He's just telling me astray. And it wasn't until probably well over 10 years later that when the pandemic happened that I had to start looking into this stuff. And yeah, you're 100% right. It's once you see it, it's hard to unsee it.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? It's very difficult to unsee it after that.
It's true, because the underworld is claiming our souls. And so there's two aspects, at least two major aspects to the human body. We have a light side and we have a dark side. The dark side is actually the soul. They've inverted everything, because SOL represents the sun, right? In Hispanic languages.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's the sun. SOL is the soul. No. Mm-mm. Soul is the shadow. The Ba and Ka. This is where the whole notion of Ka, Ba comes in with Egypt. The Ka is the light, the Ki, the inner Chi or inner Ki. I'm like, okay, Ki is Ka and Ah is Ra. Ra is the sun. So then the Ba, because you have to put your lips together, you formulate an M. Ba. And Ba is like Ma, mother, which is again the dark aspect. You have a shadow and you have a light. This is why each of us is dualistic. We go through emotional phases where we're light or dark. If we can start to rein in those emotional states because of our spiritual awareness and just balance and ride the middle pillar instead of leaning too far left or too far right. This is part of the great work of alchemy. You hold the center and the balance of the two. Now you're going to start gaining ground, because guess what? You're going to start resonating in a different frequency. And people are all out of alignment with all of this emotional charged energy. Either they're, overly happy and they're overly mad and sad and whatever, that's the design of these dark forces. The dark forces are here for part of our lessons too. You could not have your spiritual awakening without the dark force.
Yeah.
If everything is just abundantly light, what's the need to be here?
Yeah.
So I believe
that friction is needed.
Yes, you have to have that heat and the cooling, the cold calculating evil, and you have to have the hot evil that's on your tail. And, the darkness is here for our lessons. And this is where Saturn's energy comes in. Since Saturn is the hard, strict teacher, overlord kind of energy, he's going to teach you some very valuable lessons, because we're being alchemized. When you entered the blackening phase, which is like the dark night of the soul, for example, you're entering into a phase where all that you were burns off. And then you come out of it illuminated. So you enter into the whitening phase. This is what happens if you watch a piece of wood burn. It becomes black, but it eventually becomes white. And that's part of alchemy. And it's about gaining more light, which is the white. And I'm like, okay, well, we can keep growing our spiritual essence through all of this blackening phase that we will experience in one lifetime or multiple lifetimes. And we come out a more enlightened individual. So, it is a process, but you have to be at this more kind of awareness level to be able to see it all in play, and how the entire world is part of our school to gain these lessons. And what we can do is try to reach out to people and help them to see some things, but you have to learn how to speak their language. And it's like me, I've never believed in anything in the Bible, but so many people speak that language, and that's their heart. So if you can reach to people through their own language and get a message across, that they can comprehend using their language, which I've never, called the sun Jesus and all that stuff, but I realized that's what it was in the age of Pisces, and that these people are they're wholly sold on the notion that a man named Jesus is going to return, because that's what they've been told all their lives as a story. Well, I recently put out a Facebook post for some people who are up in arms about all the data centers. They're in my local county. And I kind of laid it out. I was like, look, you have to embody the presence of Jesus and not just sit idly worshiping his image or his idol, because that's not what Jesus was about. Jesus was about going out and not aggrandizing material things, but to go out and deliver a message, to be the embodiment of love and to embrace your neighbor as your brother and sister, and to, integrate a philosophy, a foundation of way of living, and to not see the division that all these labels have done. And I was just trying to get people to see, and people are like, oh my gosh, it's like, oh, thank you for delivering that message because people need to know. And I'm like, listen, we all are here for the same thing. And we're all on a different level of comprehension of what we're dealing with.
Mm-hmm.
And you get people who are like, well, Jesus wasn't, what you think, and it's actually Yeshua. And I'm like, oh my God. I had to get this person to realize that they're at fault, because they're trying to attack somebody else for their beliefs. And that's where we need to stop.